Okay, so welcome everyone to this important Evolutionary Leaders community conversation and co-mentoring workshop on feminine leadership, the courage to lead from the heart, guided by our dear colleague and fellow EL, Anita Moorjani, who will be formally introduced by Emily shortly. And I think some of you heard, but our beloved Deborah Moldell is in transit right now after a flight delay. So she couldn't be present to welcome you, but we're hoping she'll be able to listen in at some point. So I'm just filling in for her. So today we gather to explore what the world would look like if leadership fully embraced feminine qualities as essential strengths for navigating the challenges of our time. So how do we create cultures, organizations, and communities that value qualities traditionally associated with the feminine, like empathy and cooperation or emotional intelligence, nurturing, equally alongside the positive qualities associated with the masculine? So today we'll have the opportunity to deeply reflect and listen and speak honestly about what it means to lead in a way that feels true to you, and how we can support one another individually and collectively in bringing these qualities more fully into the world. So we're so grateful to Anita and Emily for all the love and consciousness they put into planning this special dialogue and co-mentoring workshop for our community. And thank you so much for creating this special opportunity for us. So now I'd like to invite our beloved keeper of the flame, Reverend Paulette Pipe, to ground and connect us in this sacred space together. So Paulette?
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So I was guided to do a little soft touch meditation given the subject today. And so we're just going to take some breaths and some self-soothing that takes us right into the heart. So if you're comfortable doing so and it's safe to do so where you are, just close your eyes and take 3 generous, full, deep breaths. And then give yourself a hug. Just hold your arms. Feel yourself being held and supported. And take 3 generous deep breaths here. Just feel everything start to let go and soften. Just like the moment. Just like our lives are softer with this practice, with this intention. And now just stroke your arms from shoulder to wrists. Breathing deeply. Calming and grounding us into this moment. Breath by breath by breath. Then come back to stillness. Hold yourself once more and notice sinking into your seat, uncurling your toes, being grounded in the moment. And then tuck one hand under your armpit and the opposite hand holds your shoulder. And take 3 generous, deep breaths here. The yin energy begins to rise as we breathe and soften. The lunar energy, the feminine energy within us, circulating and radiating out into this circle and out into our community and out into the world with this gentle, self-soothing, soft touch. My life is becoming softer, more meaningful, more powerful, clear and grounded, receptive and nurturing, compassionate and loving. And with a gentle smile on your face, now bring your hands to prayer position, resting your thumbs on your sternum, on your breastbone. And take one more deep, generous breath here. From the feminine in me to the feminine in you, and all those to whom this practice is dedicated, for a softer touch, a softer life, we now bow in gratitude to one another. Namaste, and thank you.
Paulette, could you please come with me before any time I need to speak? That was just like, talk about dropping into the heart and the feminine. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your presence before the meeting, holding the space, creating the space, and during the meeting. Thank you so much. Well, if you have not shared a room with Anita before, you are in for a real treat. Just be prepared to be inspired and engaged and to feel from your heart. I knew about Anita long before I met her. In fact, it was 2011 when I had received my own cancer diagnosis. And Anita's book, Dying to Be Me, about her near-death experience and healing from cancer naturally, wasn't even out yet. It was a PDF that I found in my hands after hearing an interview with Wayne Dyer. But that PDF was the first moment of mentorship that this woman, who was a stranger to me then, had for me and with me. Because of learning her story, even in a short version, I had hope and possibility for my own journey. And I'm grateful to say that in 4 months, I healed from cancer naturally without surgery, chemo, or radiation. So this is a big deal. And it's a big deal because I'm not the only one that's been affected by Anita. When Anita stepped into her feminine leadership and she had the courage to share a story that, let's be honest, near-death experiences aren't the most popular. A lot of people must have been naysayers. She had the courage to share that story even before the book came out. And then, of course, it became a national and New York Times bestseller, international bestseller, and she became a global phenomenon. When I learned more and more about Anita, I still hadn't met her, but I picked up her next book, which was the book about sensitive is the new strong. And I thought she'd written a manual for me. Honestly, I had come from a corporate background and I needed to be able to embrace my sensitivity. And she wrote the book for that. And so as Anita and I got to know each other, literally just within the last year, I finally had a chance to meet her in person and hug her and thank her for not only saving my life and giving me hope through her own embracing and own embodying of the divine masculine or divine feminine, and through her own courage to speak her story. But also, we talked about what was going on in the world. And she said, look, I have no interest in pushing against the existing systems. That's kind of how this conversation came to be. I'd much rather amplify the feminine voice, the feminine leadership voice that saves and changes lives. So that's what we're here to talk about. And in the spirit of Mother Teresa, who I know I've heard Jack quote this quite a bit from Mother Teresa, I believe. She said often, don't invite me to an anti-war protest. Invite me to a peace rally and I'm there. Well, today is our peace rally for feminine leadership and embracing and embodying that in all of our lives. So Anita, I can't thank you enough for being here, and not only for being here, but for the gratitude of who you are, not only on the global stage, but one-on-one. You're the same person embodied in all of your essence, and we love you for it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for initiating this conversation.
Wow, I'm feeling emotional. Emily, thank you so much for that beautiful and heartfelt introduction. It actually made me emotional. I was fighting back the tears. So thank you. I have loved getting to know you over these last months, over the last year. Oh, and I am so happy and honored to be here and to be doing this. And I think what is making me feel even happier is to see the presence of the men here. So I want to actually give the men here a special shout out, a special appreciation, because it actually takes a courage to show up at an event or at this conversation, which is about women's leadership. And that means a lot to me. And I think it means a lot to the women here. And it means a lot to the women in the world to have men also part of the conversation, because it means that you can see what's going on in the world and you can see the benefit that we would have if there were more women in power, and it would benefit everyone, men and women. It's not about one against the other, it's about making the whole better. So I want to start by just sharing from my heart what drives me and why I wanted to do this topic and what is at the heart of this conversation for me. What is it in me that makes this topic so important to me? Many of you know my story, but I'm going to recap it in the way that it relates to this particular topic. So when I was growing up, I was born into a community where the gender disparity was extreme and stark. I was born into a community where babies, male babies, boys, were favored over girls. And so I grew up with the energy of, because I was a girl, I felt not wanted. And I did learn much later in my life that my dad was disappointed that I was a girl. And when I was born, he didn't even rush to the hospital when he heard I was a girl. But if I was a boy, he would have rushed to the hospital and he would have celebrated. So I grew up in a community where it was very, very obvious and blatant from my dad that I would have been more favored if I was a boy. In my community, men were always favored over women. Men always ran everything. And also, I watched how my mom was treated by my dad and how the women in our community were treated by the men. The disparity was extremely stark, and I was often taken to the temple and to meet gurus. Everybody in leadership positions in my community, in the culture I grew up in, everybody was men. Religious leaders, corporate leaders, they were all men. And the women were all in subservient roles. And the women were rewarded for being of service to the men in their community. The women were, we were always, we were discouraged from having opinions, voices, And as a girl, as a daughter, as a youngster, as I grew into my teen years, I was being groomed to be a good wife to an Indian man someday. And so I was discouraged from higher education. I was discouraged from having a career because I was taught that it would make me less desirable for marriage. Now, there was something in me, though, that felt that there's something wrong here because I had this fire in me that felt this is not fair. If we are all children of God or source or whatever we want to call it, but if we're all part of the one and children of God, how can it be that one gender is favored over the other? How can it be that one gender is able to dictate what the other one does or how the other one behaves? I was constantly made to feel that I was wrong, that I had to silence my voice. I would get into trouble if I felt anger. So I lived a life of repression. I finally even agreed to an arranged marriage. And interestingly, 3 days before the wedding, I ran away because I discovered that I would be expected to be subservient and because I actually asked my then fiance's family if I could go out and work after I was married. Can I study? And they said, no, absolutely not. You would be expected to stay at home and serve the family. He lived with his parents. And 3 days before the wedding, I felt I couldn't go through with it, and I ran away. By running away, I actually brought shame to my entire family, my entire extended family. I brought shame to his family. And I was told that no Indian man would marry me after what I had done. I always felt there is something wrong with me because my girlfriends from the same culture, they all had arranged marriages. And I would watch their lives and I knew that I could not live the way they were living because just watching them be there in service to their husbands, because a woman's worth was measured by how valuable she was to the men in her community. And I would watch my friends go through with this and be of service to their husbands. And our value was measured by how good we were at housework. And I did not like housework. I wasn't good at housework. I was good at cooking, but I wasn't good at keeping house. But not only that, I knew I would be able to if I had to, but that's not where I wanted my focus to be. I wanted to travel. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to have a career. I wanted to earn my own money and be independent. But in my culture, you lived with your parents until you were married. And then you became your husband's responsibility. And it depended on your husband whether you could work or not. And I would hear some of my friends say that, no, my husband doesn't approve of me working, so I can't. I would hear some other friends say, oh, if you're lucky, you'll get a very open-minded husband who actually lets you go out and work. Even that didn't sit right with me. There was this sense of injustice that burned within me, and yet I had to repress myself for my culture, my community, to be able to fit in. I spent an entire life of repression. I met an amazing man who I married, who is my husband today, Danny, who is completely, I would say he's a feminist, and but interestingly, when people would see us interact and when they would see that Danny was quite happy washing the dishes or cooking or helping, not only helping with the housework, but often taking the lead, I would get derided in my community, and what the community would say to me was things like, how do you control your husband that way? Or they would literally laugh at Danny. And I overheard this. I overheard a male friend from our community saying to Danny, why do you do that? Didn't you marry so that someone else would do that for you? Literally, I heard those words. Anyway, my life progressed to the point where I still felt so repressed because I knew that if I really voiced what I truly felt, I would be disparaged. I would be rejected from the community, and I didn't want to be labeled as terms like aggressive, or even worse, bitch, or any of these terms, or even to be labeled by men, oh, she's too strong, or she's not marryable. This was when I was single. I was always afraid, because those were the terms you were trying to avoid being labeled. And eventually I actually got cancer. And as many of you know, the cancer progressed. It was terminal. I reached end stage. I went into a coma, like it had progressed and spread throughout my body. I was literally on my deathbed. I went into a coma. My organs shut down. And when I was on the other side, when my spirit left my body, that's when I awoke. And that's where I realized, oh, wow, on this side, there's no gender. Not only do we leave behind our bodies, we leave behind our culture, our beliefs, our gender, our religion, because even my religion was always imposed on me by male gurus, male religious teachers, and their teachings seemed to be very gender biased. When my parents would ask a guru, why is it so hard to get her married? The guru would say, oh, she's too stubborn, she's too picky, and things like that, which my parents would take as gospel truth because it was coming from a guru. But every guru was a male guru. Interestingly, all the people that would go and see the gurus who were sitting in front of their feet, at least at that time in this culture and community I was in, were mostly women. I would say 80% or 90% women. But the gurus themselves were all men. And in my head, I was like, why can't there be women mentors telling me it's okay to have those feelings? But here I was now on the other side. And I realized that all of that stuff, all the culture, everything, are what we create here. They don't transcend across to the other side. And when I was on that side, I understood why I had got the cancer. I understood how it was that every thought, every decision, every choice I had made during my life had led up to that point, excuse me, of me becoming ill and lying there on that hospital bed dying. I had repressed who I truly am. I had repressed who I had come here to be. And of course, it wasn't my fault, because the circumstances and my community had caused me to repress it. So I didn't blame myself, but I understood for the first time that there was nothing wrong with me. I had felt shame. I'd felt shame for leaving my ex-fiance. I'd felt shamed for being the way I am. And I realized I had nothing to be ashamed of. This is how I was created and who I was created to be. And I had repressed it. I was not meant to be a subservient, weak, dominated woman living in a community that just accepted this subservience. And that was very, very, I should say, eye-opening to me. The other thing is, my dad, who had passed away 10 years prior, I felt him greeting me on the other side. We don't have physical bodies when we leave our physical bodies. We don't have biology, but it was my dad's essence. His essence, and it's like you know who it is. And he was the one who had instilled this subservience and this fear, this lifelong way of living in subservience to men. He was the one that had instilled it in me. And I understood that he had instilled it in me, believing it was for my own benefit, that it was the best thing to do for me. And in order to get me a good husband, he felt he was doing his duty by constantly beating me down and making me feel like I should not have a voice. I should not ever show that I have a temper or that I have a fire within me that needs to express itself. Um, and and I and there he was on this side, and I expected judgment from him because I had shamed him and let him down. But no, all I got from my dad was pure, unconditional love and more of a feeling of that that he was taking responsibility, almost like a feeling that he was sorry he had done this to me, that he had shaped me in this way. And it wasn't just him. It was the entire culture and community that I came from. It was my lineage. It was part of all of that. But here on the other side, I felt that I was surrounded by beings and they were here to support me, to tell me that it was now time to break through that. It was time to break that cycle. And my dad was the one that said to me, that it's not your time to die. You need to go back and live your life fearlessly. Because I felt I had a choice as to whether to come back or stay on the other side. I wanted to stay there because it was so beautiful. And I was surrounded by love and beings that just loved me. I had never felt so much love and acceptance than on the other side, as I did on the other side. And so no part of me wanted to come back, but I was getting visions of what I had to come back and do. And I was seeing these visions of me speaking on stage in front of hundreds, even thousands of people. And I couldn't even imagine that for me. Because remember, I grew up being beaten down to be this submissive person who was a people pleaser, who avoided conflict at all costs. And now here I was seeing myself being what looked like almost someone else. And I knew that was the future that was waiting for me, but I had no idea how I would get there because no part of me was groomed to be that person or had grown up to be that person. But my dad said, you don't have to figure it out. Just live your life fearlessly. Now is your time to be all that you can be, basically. And so I did make the choice to come back. And as soon as I made the choice that I would come back and give life another chance, my physical eyes started to open because I was in this coma. And I had dealt with the cancer for 4 years. But within 5 weeks after opening my eyes, my body healed completely. There was no trace of cancer in my body. And I have the medical records to prove that. And the doctors were blown away. They couldn't understand it. Now, coming back into this physical, and this was in 2006, that is 20 years ago. 20 years ago was a different world than what we have today. And I started to share my message. And most people in the world weren't ready to hear a lot of it. I mean, everybody was happy that I was back, and even my community, and they said, wow, it's amazing you're back, and it's a miracle. And the doctors said I had a spontaneous healing. But when I shared the stories of what I experienced on the other side and what I felt and how I understood why I had the cancer, I did receive a lot of pushback. And people were saying, oh, it might be the meds that were messing with your brain. And people were in denial and they didn't feel it was realistic. And I said, but I can't go back and be the person I used to be because that was the person that got cancer. And it actually took me having to move from my community, from my neighborhood, to somewhere brand new where nobody knew me, because it was very hard for me to allow myself to be the person that was unfolding while living in the community that shaped me into being this subservient person that was so repressed and who was a people pleaser. But as I stepped into this world, I realized that this problem existed on different scales in different cultures, in different communities. But true to what I learned on that side, I my world actually completely unfolded without me having to do anything. I realized that I would face a lot of challenge as I would speak about it in person to people. I did meet a lot of people who were very encouraging, who loved what I said, who resonated with what I said. But I found that the best way to express myself was in writing. So I started to write and write and write, and I submitted my story to a near-death experience site. And the owner of the site was Dr. Jeffrey Long, who was an oncologist who wanted to see my medical records. And then he publicized my story. He put it on the home page of his website. I didn't even use my full name, but the story went viral and it was discovered by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it was Wayne Dyer that catapulted me, that brought me on his stage. And so they invited me, and I was living in Hong Kong, and Hay House were the ones who published my book. Wayne Dyer took this story to Hay House and had them track me down, and they reached out to me and they said, Wayne Dyer has discovered your story, and we would like you to write a book which we will publish, and Wayne Dyer will help you promote. And so I couldn't believe it. I started crying when I got that email from Hay House. I'd never communicated with them in my life. So I signed the deal with them. I wrote the book, which was an expansion from what I had already been writing and writing. And they published it, and they invited me to Los Angeles to speak in Pasadena on stage with Wayne. And I remember that Wayne was there on stage speaking, and then he called me up on the stage. And there I was standing there on stage in front of 3,000 people. And I had never been on stage before. And I was so scared and I was shaking. But I felt this sense of like deja vu. It's like, oh my gosh, that's what I saw in my near-death experience, me standing on stage in front of these thousands of people. And I had written that even in all my writing on that website, NDERF, it's still there before any of this unfolded. So it's actually written there that I see myself on stage. And it's written in my book, Dying to Be Me. But so here I am on stage, and Wayne looks at me and he sees that I'm nervous and shaking. And he said, "Are you scared?" And I said, "Yes, I've never been on stage before and in front of so many people." And he said, "But you've been dead and back. What have you got to be scared about?" And I said, "Actually, being dead is easier, but being here on stage is so much harder than being dead." And then people started laughing when I said that. And so that broke the ice. And then I shared my story. And so the book, thanks to Wayne, did hit the New York Times bestseller list, and it's continued to sell. It's been labeled as a contemporary classic. But more importantly, I've been blown away by the messages I've received, the letters that people write in. And I have come to learn that what I thought was more an issue in my community, in my culture, is actually a global issue. I get letters from people from all over the world, from the UK, from Europe, from America, from all over the world, where there are people who relate to what I'm saying, both men and women. There are sensitive men who have it harder than women, and women from all over the world have the same problem to different degrees. And that's what's blown me away, the amount of people that related to it. Because when I was invited to write a book, when Wayne related to my story, I honestly believed it would just have appeal to a very small number of people. I could not believe the reaction that it got. It was far bigger than anything I had expected. But as we move on through the years, I've realized that the problem appears to have gotten worse in terms of gender disparity. And in actuality, it may appear to have gotten worse because more and more people are waking up to the problem and speaking to it. But I've noticed that the way the world is today is like a bigger version, a mega version, what we're seeing play out in politics with all the masculine leadership is a larger version of what I lived in my community at that time. What also really surprised me, and I'm going to speak again from my heart in pure honesty here, is that when I entered this world of being published, which was a whole new world for me that I entered in 2011, 2012. 2012 is when my first book came out. When I entered this world and in the world of public speaking with thought leaders and spiritual teachers, this surprised me. And I'm not saying it to disparage anyone, is that I saw the same dynamics playing out even in this genre. I saw that the biggest, loudest voices were the ones with the masculine energy, the ones who were all about the numbers, the growth, the numbers, the bigness, and not about the message. In many cases, the message was being overlooked and was being sacrificed to get the numbers and the growth, and and so I started to see the same things. That again, it felt like another patriarchal system. The unfortunate thing for me is that once you see something, which is what I experienced in the near-death experience, of what it was that drove me to get sick and how it is that a lot of voices that are I'm going to say, not just the women, but the more sensitive voices, the feminine voices, the feminine traits. Once you see that, how they're the ones being pushed down, repressed, because they're being measured against masculine metrics, where certain metrics are valued over others. But when those masculine metrics are valued at a point where it has outserved its purpose, it starts to become detrimental. We start to see our society actually breaking down. We start to see the potential end of our own evolution. We start to see our potential extinction if we continue at this rate. And what was disappointing for me, I was seeing it happen within this genre. And this is where I had the idea to speak to Emily about this. I thought, as evolutionary leaders, these are new budding thought leaders as well as other leaders who've been in this genre for a long time. What can we do to change this and bring about a shift? How can we change it without fighting people? Because again, as we even said earlier, as Emily said earlier, and as even Jack says, I'm of the same belief. I don't want to fight against what is. I don't want to fight against men. I love men. I love everybody. I want us to work together to make a better world for everyone. And we will all be served better if there are more women in leadership roles. And I'm glad that this is a co-mentoring group, because I don't have all the answers, but I am looking for people to come together and support each other to help create a better world for all of us. And that's where I would love to turn it over to all of you and hear what you all have to say.
Wow, Anita, thank you so, so much. I want to just, there's so much that I could highlight, but I want to highlight one thing that your father said when you met him on the other side. You don't have to figure it out. Live your life fearlessly. And what I love is that when Anita came to me and said, I want to contribute to the ELs and I have this idea, we didn't know what that was going to look like, but it was super important to her and to me that there was reciprocity in the conversation, meaning it's not just about Anita getting on another stage and giving a talk, but really this feeds her too, to be among colleagues and peers, to have a dialogue about how can we amplify our strengths? Because as I indicated at the beginning, it changes lives and saves lives. And as an EL collective, that's how important this is. So, with that pep talk, I'm going to step off the screen and we really want to open it up to dialogue within the community, thoughts, questions, conversation. What's up for you right now? So, Diane, thanks for facilitating. And Anita, just thank you always for your wise words.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Anita, for sharing your personal, very profound story and using that experience to support gender equity. So now, as Emily said, we'd like to have an open conversation of your reflections. So we invite you to reflect on your own experiences, maybe when you have felt pressure to be or even lead in ways that were not authentic to you, or when you have witnessed feminine qualities transform a difficult situation, heal a conflict, inspire creativity, or strengthen a community. And what might become possible if feminine qualities were recognized not as exceptions but as central pillars of effective leadership and just effective ways of being in the world. So I'd like to invite all of you to switch to gallery view. And if you'd like to share, please raise your hand, which is under the react button. It's on the bottom of your screen. You'll see it in a heart emoji, and you'll see the raise hand icon close to the bottom of the reactions. And if you can't find it, you can just raise your actual hand and I'll take note that you wish to speak. So let us go off of Spotlight. Okay, and is everybody on gallery view? Okay, great. I already see a couple hands up. So Connie is first. Connie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of want to underscore a lot of what Anita said. I was raised in a in North America, but in a preacher's house, and also this is where I was taught that that women are to be subservient. Um, and ironically, I didn't have a near-death experience, but I had an experience at my father's deathbed in which angels walked into the room and talked to me about what a human incarnation actually is and asked me to write all of this down and write a book. And like you, Anita, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not really one of those people that does that. But you know, they kind of laughed at me and said, "Do you know who you're talking to?" So I guess you just like don't say no to the angel of death. But anyway, I did write the book, and like you, Anita, I discovered very quickly that the world of publishing spiritual information at that particular time, this was in the this was late 1990s, early 2000s, but it was still very patriarchal and very, economically based. And so, unlike you, I pulled back. I pulled way back. I have never self-promoted. I've written 5 books, but I haven't I haven't tried to be a part of that community because, like you, I don't know how to be in that community without the conflict. So anyway, just a great big
Wow.
yeah.
I so understand that because I wasn't socialized to deal with conflict or pushback or anything. So, wow, I relate that, and the world needs your voice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Anita. Anadea? You're on mute, Anadea.
But just to piggyback on that very recent comment, I remember in my family, if my mother got mad at all, she would say, "Oh, she's so cute when she's mad," and it was just very diminutive. I was the only female in my generation, and when I was born, my mother was going to send the baby back. She said, "Oh no, it can't be a girl." I had 2 older brothers, and the way I went with it, and also some abuse from my father, is I became very masculine. And all through my teens and my 20s and college and, developing career, I was really following masculine models of leadership and really burning my body out. And it wasn't until I came across a goddess-oriented community and did some training there and was ordained as a priestess in 1985 that I had permission to take power in a way that was feminine. And I had been trying to do it in a masculine way that never fit for me. And it was a way that I could come back to my feminine. And having studied a lot of history and religious comparative religion and all that about this and seeing what happened to the goddess and what happened to women as a result, um, I realized that women lead differently than men and they need different archetypes to guide them. And so I ended up creating a card deck of women archetypes of leadership. And that's why I was so fascinated by this call today that show different things like, one is the shepherdess who leads from behind by gathering everybody together and making sure no one is left out, and the peacemaker, and how women's role in peacemaking makes the peace last longer, and many other things like that. And and just to give a shout out of the Evolutionary Leaders, this created a feminine force collaboratory that we started 2.5 years ago, and then that became the founding mothers movement. So we are actually trying to take all this into action with a global movement of women's leadership. And so I'll just rest it there. Thank you.
Wow.
And
That's
Thank
thank
so
you for
you.
your story, Anita. Very moving. Very
Oh,
moving.
thank you. And thank you for doing what you do.
Thank
Really.
you. Thank you, Anadea. And you mentioned the card deck. So I know we also wanted to, if anybody has any resources that they think would be helpful on this topic, whether it's books or learning opportunities or conferences or future conversations, please include that with your remarks. So thank you for mentioning your card deck.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. David, you're next.
Yes, I'm delighted to be here, and I need to leave shortly. And I just, Anita, when you're on the other side, there's no gender, and we all here are incarnated, and we all have both masculine and feminine energies and awarenesses, and certainly we're in a major transformation in consciousness. And so much of it is about mindset. And I'm just wondering, have you experienced, or what have you experienced along the way where what dynamics help men to be more conscious of our feminine, because we do have our feminine, and to live into that, to expand living our feminine selves also?
That's such a great question, and I really appreciate you asking that. So, what happens is we live in a culture where traits like empathy, sensitivity, and traits like compassion and intuition are all considered weaknesses, whereas these are actually strengths. And if men want to cultivate those, men unconsciously, many of them don't even realize it, but they have repressed these traits, just like I grew up to repress any strong traits of speaking out. Men have repressed their, what we call feminine traits. Interestingly, though, is that when women are allowed to develop fully, what happens is they amplify their feminine traits. That gets, just like Anadea just spoke about, it's about amplifying feminine traits, and it's about amplifying masculine traits. So when men are not shamed for being empathic, intuitive, and these things, they actually become much stronger men. They are then able to use their physical strength and their version of reasoning power in a way that is more empathic and compassionate and put it to a better use. Women at the same time are then able to use their ways of negotiating. And I mean, I'll just give you some examples of masculine and feminine traits to make this a bit clearer. So A typical masculine trait is competition. And at its extreme, competition means treating life or everything that you get into as a zero-sum game. It's like there are only winners and losers. But but when a man is allowed to develop their feminine traits, they realize that it's not about competition, it's about collaboration. And it's not bad to have competition, but it's okay for other people to win. So masculine at its extreme means I have to win at all costs. But when it's not at its extreme is I feel great for the person that won. A typical feminine trait that I would say is the mirror to competition is collaboration. Women innately are more collaborative than men, but also they need to sometimes be competitive. But when women are competitive, it's usually they're usually able to be happy when other people win. But when a woman is suppressed, the negative side of collaboration is that you never speak out. You never say, like the repressed version of me. And also, like some of you have said, when you're always repressed and you never speak out, when you think that everybody else's voice is more important than yours and you never share your voice, that's the downside of the feminine collaboration. The upside is when you are an assertive collaborator, you bring people together, you're a connector. That's the positive side of collaboration. A masculine trait is growth. It places growth as a very high priority. If we're not growing, we're losing. We're not winning. Growth means winning. We have to grow, grow, grow at all costs. This is what drives a lot of corporates. It's what drives, even in publishing, the numbers, the social media numbers. And in that, the message is lost. It's about saying the right thing to get the numbers, to get the votes. It's very growth oriented. A feminine trait is sustenance. It's not about growth. It's about sustaining what we have, using what we have, making the best of what we have. And both are needed. If you don't have both, there's no movement. But we're at a stage in our lives right now where there's far too much importance being placed on growth. So in order to bring out, even for men, to value the feminine traits, it would be on shifting your focus to sustenance and using your strength and your logic to actually focus in that arena. Because when we start to see that we're out of balance on one side, it's just about starting to focus on the other side. So I would say two places that anybody can start is to think in terms of collaboration instead of competition, sustenance instead of growth. Another third one could be connection with people, finding similarities. A typical one that social media is that happens very prominently in social media is divisiveness and causing rage. The trait that we can actually imbibe would be one that's connection and make posts, make blogs, make things like that that actually see similarities and bring people together. So these are all things that any gender can do.
Right. Thank you very much. Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Now we thank you, Anita. Now we have the dynamic leader of the Power of Women. So, Shonali.
Thank you, Diane. It was so wonderful seeing you earlier this month. And Anita, I have to say, me being here was so meant to be because David just messaged me saying you need to be on this call, and I just happen to have this hour available. And the reason I say I was meant to be is my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer a couple of months ago. And you were the first person that came to my mind when she asked for some form of book to read, some self-help guide. And I knew about you because Sharon Farber and we actually spoke to you a few years ago about your book and making a movie out of it.
Oh, yes.
And we lost touch, but you always stayed in my mind, and I didn't know how to reconnect with you. But a couple of months ago, I looked for your book to see if I could find a translation. Because I remember reading it. She had me read it before our meeting. I read the book in 2 days, trying to go through everything, and I was so inspired. And just to see you here, I didn't know this session was happening. Thank you, Diane, and the whole EL Circle for really hosting this. I think this is so special. I was just crying inside my heart just hearing you and talking about cancer, because it is something, I mean, after all, we are not talking about these are repressed emotions. People end up, the body learns to process in a different way, and you learn how to release it and come back and share your message, which is the power of women, the feminine that you're really bringing forward. And I'm just happy that you're here and I got the message, because thank you, David. I know he just left, but oh, he's here. But he just messaged me, just happened in such a coincidence. And because Diane, you mentioned about conferences, I would love to have Anita as a speaker this year during the Digital Power of Women conference. So if you can connect us, I would love that. And truly, Anita, thank you so much for what you shared. I really felt it. I'm originally Sri Lankan. I had
Oh,
amazing a dad and a brother who is really encouraging me to be who I am. And I know the other side of that coin, what it really means to have men's support. It really is how can we, you said some beautiful things about inviting men to really realize, then it actually only serves them more
yes.
as much as us. So it's about balance, and I'm really grateful for this session. I have to leave. I'm going to stay a couple of minutes because I have another call, but this was so special. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shonali. Okay, now we have our ethereal songstress and alchemist, our beloved Kristen Hoffman is next.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just want to open my heart and express the deepest gratitude, Anita, for your sharing today and for being a beacon of the great remembering, I think, that's happening right now. I feel on my own path, I left the mainstream music industry when I was 27 after also feeling like there was a cap on everything. And it has taken great courage to navigate, especially as a female, in recording and production and in music, which is typically a very male dominated
Yes.
scene. And yet it's been such a pleasure every day to wake up and feel like I'm creating my own path. But it is filled with moments of fear and not knowing where I'm going to steer next. And I have to say, when I hear your story, and I just in the last year, I also heard you share your story on the telepathy tapes. And I can't tell you how many times just the other day, I remember I was walking my dog and feeling, oh, where are things going next? I'm living in this world. AI is kind of taking over. And I felt the little fears coming in. And I just said, and I saw you on the stage, and I felt the message that you were sharing that we are souls held in so much love, and that we are guided and supported. And I saw you standing on that stage in my heart's eye. And I just said, trust in the way. And all of a sudden, my whole system, every cell just opened with ease and love and curiosity. So I don't have anything particular to say about my path, but I want to thank you for really instilling, like, I feel you have encoded me with a new wonder and curiosity and a tool in my toolkit. So when I'm feeling those little doubts come in, I can remember the encoding that you've passed on, and I feel it, I remember it, I listen to it, and then I trust and I open. And in my opening, suddenly things start guiding again. And I feel that's what we're doing here. We don't have to, like you said, we don't have to know exactly where it's going. We don't have to understand it in here, but if we can relax into and trust into what you've shared and your message from the other side and just open, 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 that's when we are guided and we know how to rebalance the masculine, the feminine, and steer ourselves. So I'll stop there, but thank you.
Oh,
I love you. I don't even know you in person, but I love you, and I'm so grateful for you.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kristen. And next, Jeanette Walpert Holman, who is the founder of the Illuminate Film Festival and many other things. So, Jeanette.
Yes. Hello, Anita, and hello, EL family. I'm coming to you. I'm sorry if there's noise in the background. I'm actually at a film conference in Chicago. And synchronicities abound because while I'm in panel yesterday, Anita, I got wind from Kaya Roman of Frequency and Vic that you will be joining us as
Yes.
a panelist and speaker for a big film premiere. So that's excellent.
Yes.
And you were our number one choice, by the way, because of this of your divine feminine embodiment. And I feel like in your heart forwardness. And when we are programming, now that is the thing that we look for the most. And you know, there were times where we were like really going into quantum physics, or we were really going into science and spirituality or whatnot. But right now, we feel like what the world needs is this heart forward communication, this vulnerability, these divine feminine traits. Um, so anyway, I'm just really honored that you'll be with us and that you'll be leading with those divine feminine characteristics. And
Wow.
yeah, and then also I want to just share my personal relationship to this topic, which is that you know I grew up in a wonderful family, but with two men, my dad and my brother, who really did not speak the language really of any feminine traits. I think they were conditioned, you know, early to be um um you know, also like logic. The only thing that exists is logic, right? And so here I am, this very emotional, Pisces, sensitive person, and I didn't feel actually like anybody understood me. But to earn, right, the praise of this family system, I was like, well, I'm going to go be an engineer, and I'm going to prove that I could do, you know, what the guys could do, and I could excel at that, and I could play that game. Um, I did like math though, so like, you know, I did honor myself as well. But um, I found that over the course of my career, I actually kind of started to become more aware of why I was going into the work that I was doing. And then I completely shifted. I totally left this whole IT and engineering field. And I went into film because I felt film could really communicate, influence, teach. Um, there was a lot of feeling and emotion in it, and it had a lot of power because if you communicate that feeling and emotion, you can really inspire people from the heart. Um, Now, one thing that I'm curious about, and you did just kind of explain, right? What does what does the feminine look like when it's, you know, too extreme? And of course, what does the masculine look like when it's too extreme? Because I feel like I've done the seesaw thing where I went too masculine, then I went too feminine. Um, and so it's just sort of this whole challenge to lead from this balance place. And I'm just wondering, how do you think we can teach our young leaders and our entrepreneurs the science of this balance early on, so we don't have to seesaw for years through our careers?
That's a great question. So I would say the first step is awareness. It's awareness that we are imbalanced. That's number one. And I would say number two is the willingness for people to have this conversation where neither side is attacking the other. Like I have had conversations with people, and people have to be open to wanting a better world. They have to be open to seeing that we do need to shift and we need to change. And for example, in the past, when this happened to me 20 years ago, and I came back and I started talking about how I had been repressed because of my gender and things like that. And if I said things like that women are repressed and women are forced to become more like men if they want to succeed in the workforce, but the workforce has been designed by men for men. And so that's why if women want to succeed, they have to become more like men. And when they become more like men, then they're actually judged for being, oh, you're so masculine, you're so aggressive, or, men don't like you as much. That's certainly the world I lived in. But the thing is, we have to be able to see that. And the other argument is that I used to receive from men is that, yeah, but men go to war. You think you have it bad. Men go to war and we fight. And so we do that so that you don't have to. Here's the thing. What we have to recognize is that if there are enough women in leadership, if there's a balance, let's go with balance. If there is a balance in leadership where even the feminine traits are valued, you will find that not every decision, political decision, leads to war. And that's the imbalance that we're finding today. That if there was more feminine leadership, women have a different way to problem solve. Women don't want their men, their sons, their husbands, or even their daughters going to war and fighting on the front lines. They don't want it. Most women, or even men who think with compassion, empathy, that's not their first solution. So it impacts us in a bigger way where even at its core, the decisions that are made are very different as to how to problem solve. But we are on this path where we're living in a world that has been created by the patriarchy, for the patriarchy, and women have to navigate in this world. So the first thing is even to find men who can see that as well, who also want a different world. And thank God there are many today. There are more and more. And that's what's really heartening, because many of them are seeing the downside of what we've created.
That's so helpful. Thank you, Anita.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Danette, and thank you, Anita. Okay, next we have our dear Dr. Julie Kroll she's the host of All Things Connected. I'm just kind of giving a little brief bio just so you know who everybody is. So,
I appreciate
Julie?
that.
Hello, Anita, and thank you. That was a beautiful, actually lead into my question. So I'm really happy. You said something important, and I want to bring it back in and look more globally and systemically, because I think this is an opportunity for us to co-mentor one another into building the new systems and structures. So when you're talking about the patriarchy is built from men for men in that model, I'm working with several leaders right now, and one of them, whom I love, is building a $200 million project. And he says every decision that a woman has ever made in leadership has gone through a council of men. Even if they're a CEO in a corporation, most of the board is men, and it's this patriarchal system. And so his conviction is, I want to build a governing structure that he first says that every decision made by a man, because he's a man in charge of this $200 million project, every decision from a man goes through a council of women. But again, he's holding this in the this or that, right? He's holding it in the masculine or feminine. He's holding it in a way that even with himself, when it comes down to decisions, because I've watched him, he'll just go make that decision and go, construction, I got to make the decision now. Boom. And it doesn't go through the Council of Women. But he doesn't have a design structure of the next whatever that is that's not patriarchal. And you said, which I think is essential, you said you couldn't go back to your life because that person is the person who got cancer.
Yes.
And I think that's where we're at on the planet right now. Like, we all are in this place of our near-death experience, looking at our systems and structures, saying, if we're really going to do this, we have to build the new. So my question is to everyone, but to you first, Anita, I'm wondering if you know of any models of leadership, because it feels like it's not the antithesis of something. It feels like it's the full embodiment of our own masculine and feminine traits. I just said this to a 30-year-old. He was saying, yeah, men need to lead. We need 51% men because they know how to get things done. And I said, what if it's 51% women and 49? Well, I think it would be okay if there were enough men there. And I said, what if it's not a numbers game at all, but we're all embodying our feminine and our masculine, and we're showing up in our wholeness in relationship to our masculine, feminine. There are many models that have been out there. There's circle models, there's indigenous models, there's a lot of leadership models, but I'm not finding any that are working really well in holding masculine, feminine in relationship to each other and really empowering the not even balance. Sometimes we need a lot of masculine drive. Sometimes we need a lot of feminine wisdom. Like it needs to be this dynamic thing. So I'm wondering if you're aware of any models, and then anybody in our beautiful EL room here, if anybody does, I wonder if we could create an archive, Emily, maybe of some resources, and Andrea, maybe, or Anandea, you might have some too with the movement going. It's like, where are these models? How are they working? Who's in them? And how do we begin to teach and replicate in that fractal nature of who we are in relationship to both?
I like what you're saying a lot, and the reason I like it is because I don't have such a model and I struggle with the same thing. And so I think that definitely it's something even I would love to hear from anyone about, and something that I think needs to be made and structured so that we have a model to follow. So I love that you brought that up. So thank you.
Diane, your mic is off.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Carissa, are you with us? Let's see if she's here. Yes, she's here.
Yes, I am.
This is Carissa Sims from Humanities Team, and she's also the host of the Zen Success Show. Carissa?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I wasn't sure if anyone else was going to respond to that question, that incredible question that you had, Julia. I feel like there's so much depth to these questions and comments that people are bringing to you, Anita. I'm like kind of nervous right now for some reason, but it's just an honor to be here with you in Zoom, to be talking with you directly. I have read your book. I'm also a cancer survivor. I did not have a near-death experience. However, I did feel that my healing was an awakening in its own way. And people that have near-death experiences like you that share from the other side, I feel like it helps humanity, that in the respect that we don't necessarily have to have that near-death experience, and we can feel that resonance, that frequency of what you're saying. That person that was diagnosed with cancer is no longer here. This is the new Anita Moorjani. And where you're embodying this feminine leadership. And I'm so excited for you to be speaking at the Illuminate Film Festival. And that film festival is realizing the importance of highlighting that feminine leadership. And so the question I have for you is embodying this feminine leadership in the world. Do you have practices that you do yourself or that you can recommend that we do to continue this high vibration of what you were saying to David, of that collaboration, that connection, of bringing that intuitive wisdom to our projects, to our books when we're in community? And how can we do that as a woman? I would love to hear your advice. Thank you.
Sure. So the practices that I bring in are more connecting with my intuition and my spiritual side. So just to compare, like there was a time, let's say even before my near-death experience, or even in the beginning when I first came back, and even when entering this world of publishing and so on, when we would, when I would talk about how I needed to get into the right feeling, when I needed to clear the space, I needed to connect to my intuition. Oftentimes, these kinds of things are considered, they're considered woo-woo. And again, I'm going to relate that side, that feeling, or that that categorization, that when you're working, when you're in business, there's only room for logic and only room for anything, for materialism, logic, numbers, and so on. That's where we make the big mistake. And so my practice is to not let anyone knock me off my spiritual connection. That is so. I'm trying to articulate it because I realize it's something I do naturally and I haven't put it into words, but it's good. You've put me on the spot and I'm going to put it into words. When I move forward in the world, in in anything I do, whether I'm writing a book, whether I'm excuse me, even having a business meeting with somebody, even when I'm talking about a movie deal, I always lead spirit first, not brain first, not mind first, but spirit first. And then I let the mind shape what my spirit wants. Most people have been trained and taught, because we live in a system that's dominated by the patriarchal way. Everything, our education system, our all our business organizations, they've all been created by the patriarchy. So if you were going to be innately in your natural state, I would suggest even men try this, but tune in first. That's why, like, if I think about it, if I had to figure out with my mind how to get from where I was lying in that hospital bed, dying and seeing my future, to where I am today, to where I actually am today, if I had to figure it out logically, there's no way I would have got here. I'm not that smart. I let spirit lead. And for me, that is the feminine. Letting spirit lead is the feminine. And that's how it feels for me. I don't usually talk about it so publicly and tell people, because one thing that I'm also very conscious of, I never want to come across as being someone who is saying we all need to respect the feminine over the masculine. I'm not trying to say the feminine traits are better than the masculine traits, but I am saying that for me, leading with spirit and then letting the mind follow and figure out how to follow what spirit wants has worked. It's got me this far. I'm still here. So that's my practice.
Thank you, Anita.
That really touched me. I'm sorry to interrupt, and I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you so much. Now we have our two brothers, and then Kanu and Scott, and then I think that's all the time we have, and then I'll turn it back to Anita and Emily. So now we have Raymond, who is the author of Call to Something Greater, about raising consciousness and conscious evolution, and which many of our Evolutionary Leaders members are in. So Raymond.
Thank you. Anita and Emily, when I signed up for this program today, this meeting, I kind of wasn't sure why I was signing up, but I decided something's telling me that I need to come hear this. And so I didn't come expecting to get any particular thing out, but I'm glad that I'm here because I needed to hear you tell your story. Even though I read your book years ago, I needed to hear you speak to that because 2.5 years ago, I had the very good fortune where I went through some experiences. I raised my energy by a huge level, and I was suddenly able to have telepathic conversations with God. And that has been a profound experience, and I do it often. I talk with God often, and many people respond to that by saying, that's crazy. That's just your imagination. And so,
Yes.
and God has specifically asked me to share my experience with the world and to share that anyone can learn to speak with God in the same way, telepathically. And so I've struggled with how to do that because there's a lot of pushback to that idea of talking with God. And so, any specific recommendations about that?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you do that. That's brilliant. I think that's wonderful. I think you're doing it right and keep doing it. And it gets, I think you'll already find it gets more and more clear and powerful. And I talk with spirit all the time um, and all the time. And I hear them talk back to me as well. I mean, they're guiding me and speaking with me all the time. So just keep doing it. You've got it. This is exactly it. And don't let anyone take it away or debunk it or tell you it's woo-woo. I think that's wonderful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that and for being here.
Thank you, Raymond. Okay, next up, we have another brother, author and motivational speaker, Jack Canfield. He's also the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which I know many of you probably read, among many other books. So, Jack, welcome.
Well, I will keep myself brief because I know there's not much time. I literally could write a book based on everything I just heard today and what it brought up in me. I once told someone told me I should join a thing called Authors Anonymous. Every time you get a new idea for a book, you call them up, your sponsor, and they talk you out of it. So I now have 300 books with my name on it. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I just some reflections and thoughts. The Dalai Lama, you probably all heard, said the world will be saved by Western women. I truly believe that, as he does. Um, One of my students named Pooja Puneet, who lives in India, wrote a book called Unlocking the Golden Cage, 7 Steps to Engaging, Designing the Life You Love, because she grew up in that same culture, Anita, as you know. So I got to write the foreword to that book, which was kind of fun. One of the big thoughts about healing men that I think most people don't realize is men are wounded boys. And basically, my reflection on this is I've been finishing a book called Ayahuasca for the Soul. It's like Chicken Soup for the Soul, but it's 80 stories of people's journeys to liberation, transformation, spiritual awareness, awakening, etc. And I just finished interviewing 3 servicemen, one Navy SEAL, one doctor in the Navy, and one Marine. And basically, when they did their ayahuasca journeys, they had to heal their trauma. They were all PTSD. But interestingly, their healing wasn't about what happened to them when they were a soldier. It all went back to when they were a kid, usually 4, 5, 6 years old, and they didn't get the love of their father. They wanted to prove to their father they were worthy, and one it was their mother. And it's interesting about service because one of the guys said when he was 5, he rescued a cat. Brought the cat in, gave it some milk. The cat threw up all over the house, shat all over the house. Mother came home and said, "What have you done?" And he said, "I felt the shame of trying to help somebody. So I realized it wasn't good, and I felt helpless. And I didn't want to feel helpless." Well, where do you not feel helpless? When you have a gun, when you've been trained to kill, when you feel safe. So you join the Navy SEALs, what he did. So we have to be very aware that we have to heal the wounded boy. And that's challenging work. That's why I do the ayahuasca work that I do. The other thing is, education. I spent 30 years teaching self-esteem to teachers to teach them to teach self-esteem to kids. And we developed a thing called circle time where kids sit in circles every day for 10 minutes in the morning. And we give them a prompt, a time when I felt this, a time when I felt rejected, a time when I didn't know what to say. So they learn to talk about their feelings because they're not taught to do that in school. And our schools are teaching the mind, not the emotions. So we need affective education out there. And anything else here? Oh, I co-lead a workshop called authorsuccess.com every 6 weeks for about 15 authors. This last group, we had everyone in there was coming from service. We had a woman who runs ayahuasca things down in Colombia. We had a guy who spent 8 years pilgrimaging around the world and writing a really beautiful book. A woman who's channeling the divine, she calls it, who's teaching self-love, which is what's important. And even me, one of the questions you have to ask yourself that she puts in her book was, have I loved myself unconditionally enough today? And if I love myself unconditionally, what would I do right now? I'm reading her book at 1 a.m. and I said, God, if I love myself unconditionally, I go to bed. So we're always kind of learning to do that. But basically, I think that's good news. What I'm trying to say, a lot of people are writing about this from that perspective. And lastly, what Anita said about spirit, I studied psychosynthesis, and the whole idea is your higher self comes down, gives you direction, then you use your mind to fulfill what the intuition got from the higher self. So that's what we should be teaching in schools. And
Yes.
I think that anything you can do to support your schools, I want to try to put together a group of motivational speakers that would tie 10% of their times to speaking to teachers and students in schools because they're not getting this in the schools. They're not getting, no one's paying attention to them. We're all trying to save the corporations and make them more responsive and develop our things that we do. But we also, I think, if we put some time into education for the next generation, that is critical as well. And I'll stop talking.
Oh, I love everything you said, Jack. Thank you. And what I loved is particularly is about healing the wounded boy. I think that if you were to write a book about that, about helping men to embrace their feminine traits, that would be very powerful.
Yeah, I'll call my sponsor, but I'll probably end up doing it.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. I thought you were retiring. That's what you said last time.
Not the writing, and then I do this one thing every 6 weeks with the author. It's too much
Okay,
fun.
great. Great. You can't give up. I saw Deborah just joined us. So welcome, Deborah. Wonderful. So, okay, thank you, Jack. Next, Kanu Kogag, who is the author, executive coach, and founder of Bridges in Organizations, a coaching and leadership organization. So, Kanu?
Yeah, I just want to thank you first, Anita, because I feel very validated in the things that you said, and I wanted to especially offer a leadership model that we've used for a number of years. It's called Leadership Alchemy, and it wasn't necessarily feminine leadership. Where it was most successful was at NASA. It was a 9-month workshop. We had 9-month program. We had up to 30 workshop days, which was unheard of. It's still unheard of. Nobody can do more than 2 or 3 hours of any kind of program these days since the pandemic. But we had that much, and we had it was a combination of number of things. And it was engineers, scientists, and business people. And what made that leadership model work was that it was based on language and learning to speak a specific kind of language, using language as action. The second was the emotional intelligence, and really deep on emotional intelligence. The third aspect was the physical and really teaching through the body. And because we worked so much through the body, men and women in the class, and then we had diverse action learning groups, which also helped with people at different levels, different backgrounds. That's what made it work. But what really working through the body made it work, but what really worked, and we didn't call it this, We didn't call it meditation. We called it attention training. We didn't call it relaxation. I mean, we didn't call it yoga or anything like that. We changed the language so that people could accept what we were doing. And it was that we made the room a safe container. We changed the whole room. We took out all the chairs and tables. We had movable not chairs. We took out all the tables. We had chairs that were movable. And so we could do different configurations. We cut off the room, just not from the outside. You could see through the windows, but nobody through the doorways or through the inside of the training rooms could ever look inside. So there was this feeling of containment, and everybody who came in the room when they first walked in got a hug. And it was this non-verbal way of being with people that really incorporated exactly those feminine values that you were talking about, the collaboration, the sustainability, kind of creating safety for doing something so different. And it was an award-winning program. I still think about and kind of grieve in a sense that the world is not like that anymore. But it was a truly life-altering experience for me as well. And I had one other experience that I want to share with you. I did leadership training in Rwanda for women to help them get elected to the parliament in 2004. And what I saw from that was how the women had such a hard time even raising their eyes. There was one woman in the group who could actually look, excuse me, one second. She could actually raise her eyes and look at other people with eye contact. But when they stood in front of the room, a woman had such a hard time giving eye contact. So it was so much happens through the body, through the consciousness, through the creating a field of safety that I think is a huge part of what would be called feminine leadership. And I watched those women in action. I was the only white woman there, which is kind of amazing. Yeah. And I learned so much from these women and how they showed up, but where they had trouble standing in the masculine, but how they held their feminine so powerfully, and they were so grounded. It was incredible. And that year, the next year, the parliament was made up of 40% women, many of the women who were in our group. So I was very proud of that.
Wow.
I think that there's if you're ever open to a conversation, I can tell you what I've learned. I can't say that I am an expert on feminine leadership by any means, but I have learned a lot over the years from the big systems I've worked in.
Wow. That's super interesting. Yes, I would love to know more or find out more or hear more. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. And last is Scott Katomis, who's the co-founder and executive producer and host of the Global Peace Tribe. And he's also a master relationship coach, and he's also the Evolutionary Leaders Community Connection Coordinator. So welcome.
Thank you. I'll be brief.
Mm.
Anita, good to see you again. You were on our show a few years ago. And I just respect what everybody has shared. You know, Jack and all of you are doing such wonderful work. I've been blessed to have many wonderful mentors in my life, and one of them taught that, of course, we all have a feminine and masculine side. And I was thinking about this in one of Anita's most recent comments. He taught that ideally the divine masculine within and also in the male gendered being provides the safety for the divine feminine to relax so that the divine feminine can connect to spirit and become that channel for spirit to flow through, which creates the leadership, which creates the spirit-driven guidance. And then the divine masculine takes its strength to empower it, to back it up, to support it. And that's the ideal cycle, whether it's within an individual or whether it's within a relationship. And that's always kind of worked for me. And I'm curious, Anita, how you would relate to that way of looking at it.
That very similar, and I like what you said. It's exactly like that, where I would just connect with the divine. But you were very lucky to have a mentor to show you that and teach you that, because when I understood from my near-death experience, when I started to understand that I have to stand up and speak out more, I didn't know how to do it. And especially when my book came out and I was projected out into the world, I was mentioning that the world I was in, I was really surprised to find was also a little bit of, not more than a little bit, it was also run like a patriarchy. I was wanting to find a female mentor, somebody who was a successful version or an embodied version or an advanced version of where I was trying to go. And I could not find a female version. There were men. I was surrounded by male speakers, male authors. But at that time in this genre, most of the audience were women, but most of the speakers were men. And I saw the men, the young men, being mentored by the ones who had been in this scene for a longer time. And this was another thing that was a driving force. And I even wrote about it, I believe, in my book, Sensitive is the New Strong, where I realized that I had to be my own mentor, because in my head, I kind of knew what I had to do and where I was going and what I had to stand for, because I literally felt inside that I died and came back to do this. I have to do it. But who do I look to? And there weren't any at that time. So I love that you shared that, Scott, because now you would make a great mentor to other people. And I've always appreciated everything you do. And one thing I'll say for all the men who are here, Scott and Jack and all the other men, Raymond and the men who are here, you guys are examples of people who have embodied both the masculine and the feminine, and the world needs you all. And Yusuf, I'm so grateful for all of you. So, yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
Anita. Thank you.
So as we conclude, there's a question in the chat directed towards Jack, but it could be Jack and anybody else that wants to add on. Just to share his perspective from someone who's been in the visible spiritual circles for a long time. How are those circles changing to further embrace feminine leaders? So Jack, if you'd be willing to answer that, and anybody else that would like to jump in.
Let me unmute. I started an organization called the Transformational Leadership Council, very similar to what Evolutionary Leaders is, and also on the board of advisors for the Association for Transformational Leadership, which is a local Southern California brand of that. And I'm on the board of the Rhythmia Life Advancement Center, and big effort in all those places to have the board balanced with men and women. And so and I would say our organization has grown. There's probably more women in it than men. Women have always been much more able to access those parts of themselves than I think men have. And so, but consciously making those choices, even almost in our bylaws, so I see that happening. I don't have a lot more to say about that. I mean, I'm a big follower of Lynn Twist, the Pachamama Alliance. That's another feminine-led organization. She talks about sufficiency rather than abundance, and all the things we're talking about. There are a lot of examples of it. And so it's almost as if there ought to be someone creating an association of transformational female leaders or something like that. No, very seriously. I mean, kind of have it here looking at the screen. But the point being that I think just the naming of that and its presence would make a statement to the culture, something to think about.
Maybe Anita. Thank you, Jack.
I think it's a good idea. And we would welcome men in the community, but the focus would be on helping women become leaders, on mentoring women to be leaders. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I just started an organization I have 5,000 people trained to teach my work. And we just started a leadership council, Success Principles Leadership Council. And the idea there is that we're wanting the best people that are doing this successfully to mentor those below us. So they're really getting like 80 to 100 people to be mentoring the other 4,900. So mentorship is really, really critical right now.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add to that before we close?
I think I would like to just speak to this concept of co-mentorship, because one of the things that we found in our exchange, Anita and I, and even in the conversations that Julie and Scott and I have had about this concept of mentorship, is that the evolutionary leaders, as the way we are, we don't really conform to a hierarchy. So there's this notion of, if I'm going to mentor somebody, there's very likely many, many things they're going to teach me. Anita and I experienced that together, and I think it created a bond I didn't quite expect, but was so grateful for, because there was this reciprocity. And we all have so much going on in our lives that the connections that we have need to feel reciprocal, that we're getting nourished as much as we are nourishing. And so I want to keep elevating that term that I think Deborah brought to the table of co-mentorship. We all have so much to gain and give to one another.
Thank you. Deborah, are you able to speak, or I see you're on the van and the shuttle?
I can unmute you.
Yeah, she's looking like okay, let me see. She can't. I just asked her to unmute, but she can't.
There she goes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, we can hear. Well, we can't hear you.
Maybe put it in the chat, Deborah. We know you're here with us. Awesome.
Okay. Okay, so before I turn it back to Anita and Emily, as we conclude today, I just want to thank them so much, and Paulette as well, and all of you for making this special program all that it is. The future we have discussed today calls upon all of us to really explore what becomes possible when leadership embodies a wider range of feminine qualities, balanced with the positive masculine qualities. So one that honors compassion alongside strength, and collaboration and relationship building alongside achievement, and intuition alongside logic, and care alongside action. So thank you everyone for your openness, your insights, and your willingness to fully engage in this exploration. And let's continue to explore together. So Emily and Anita, I just wanted to turn it back to you for any last reflections.
I want to echo my thanks to Anita for initiating this conversation after just a few EL connections that she and I made over the past many months. So thank you, Anita, for following your heart and being so generous with your time and your wisdom. And I would yield the floor to you to close us off with any additional wisdom that's brewing through you that wants to be spoken.
Oh, I just want to thank all of you, Emily. I really enjoyed speaking to you all the times that we were speaking together. I'm so grateful to Deborah and Diane and for making this happen. I so appreciate all of you so much. And I loved the term co-mentoring, because it immediately made me feel that I didn't have to have all the answers, because I don't feel I do. I still struggle. So the words I want to leave you all with is that I still struggle as well. I still don't feel I've got there, but I don't think we ever get there. It's the journey. And I am actually loving this conversation, and I think this is the start of much more. So thank you all so much, everybody, for your openness, for being here. So grateful for all of you, really, truly. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Blessings.
And I'm sitting in the background.
I'm hanging on, Diane.
Okay, I'm going to save the chat so we have that.
Hi, Nancy. And Anita's team. Yeah, that was great.
Oh, we should have thanked Anita's team too. I didn't think.
Yeah. You're on mute, Nancy. We'd love to hear your voice.
Sorry, I was trying to raise my hand and I couldn't find the thing for it. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Just nice to see everyone, and you know, I don't feel so bad now that our board is so inappropriately heavy in women. I just didn't want to have diverse, reverse discrimination.
Who do we have? We just have Mitchell. Is he the only man? Oh, wait, I should stop.
Maybe we should try to bring on a few more men that